Welcome to all of you in LA. I'm sure I speak for the panel in that we're excited to appear there without actually traveling there today, and given our busy schedules. But it's so neat to use this technology, and I guess that's sort of a joke right now. But anyway, hello, and I want to give you a little bit of some working ground rules today, especially given this technology. First of all, because we're short of time, we're not going to introduce, I'm not going to introduce all of the panelists. I'm going to let them sort of give us a quick overview of what they do as they speak. But you can certainly refer to your program for their bios and any other further information you need. Secondly, if time allows, we certainly would love to have some Q&A, and I don't know, given the current technical situation, how we'll exactly do that. But if we have time, we certainly want to do that. But that's all to say, hold your questions, if you could, till the end. Those of you in the offline audience and those of you in the chat room know that we'll go back and look at those questions if we are afforded that time. We're going to, I sort of joked earlier with the panelists that we're going to sort of think of, we're the outsiders here. We're going to talk about cities elsewhere. And the panelists have each been asked to sort of give, again, sort of a joke, a weather report as to what they are observing in their capacities as they either work with one city or several in terms of the music ecosystems, specifically focusing on the dynamics and the approaches that are being taken in the cities they work with. And I'm going to essentially ask that same question of all of them as we go along. And the first person I would like to share with us today is Maggie Weiland, a little north of you all, up in San Francisco. And Maggie, again, to that question as to what you are seeing in your city, could you share that with us?
Sure. Hi, Storm, and hello, panelists, and everybody out there on the internet and in person watching this. My name is Maggie Weiland. I'm the Executive Director of the Entertainment Commission in San Francisco. I have been officially in this role since August. I was appointed by Mayor London Breed at that time, although I did serve as acting director for about 15 months prior to that, and I've been in the Entertainment Commission for about 4 years now, as I was the deputy director prior to that. I've spent my entire career, the last 10 years, in public service. So I've worked in different agencies in San Francisco, including beginning with the mayor's office. It was then Mayor Gavin Newsom, who's now our governor, and then moving on to Department of Environment and the Film Commission. And so I've kind of seen entertainment from many different angles, but always through a lens of public policy. But from a personal note, I am an avid showgoer. I'm at shows at least once a week during our high season. I'm a singer. I go to as many events as I possibly can. I just love to get after it. And so I always am thinking of things through that lens as well. And so I want to just kind of give you guys a little bit of background on the Entertainment Commission so that you can have some context here. So we're kind of a baby department in terms of San Francisco departments. We were created by a city charter and a vote by the people in 2003. So we're currently a 7-member staff. We started off with only 3 people who were just passionate hustlers, essentially working within the entertainment industry, as well as public policy people. And then now we're 7, which is great. So we keep growing. And we have a 7-person commission as well. Our commission is really amazing, actually. Sometimes, as far as commissions go, they can tend to be pretty political. And this one is made up of 2 industry representatives in San Francisco, 2 neighborhood reps who are also big proponents for entertainment, a law enforcement representative, an urban planner, and a health representative. So really, we're kind of looking at entertainment and nightlife through a very holistic lens. We also work hand in hand with the Office of Economic and Workforce Development. I'm not sure if he's on a panel later today, but Ben Van Houten is essentially our night manager or night mayor in San Francisco. So him and I are sort of a balancing act. I'm more of the regulatory side. I issue and regulate permits for entertainment. So we're talking about fixed place brick and mortar nightlife spaces. We have about 700 spaces in San Francisco that we regulate. And then we have one-time events that we regulate for both indoor and outdoor entertainment and amplified sound. And so if you're going to be doing any kind of activity like that, we're going to work with you to make sure that you're compliant with safety and security best practices, as well as making sure that your noise limits are within code. So kind of from that background, I just wanted to jump in really quickly to what's going on here in San Francisco. So nightlife is a huge economic driver here in the city. It generates $6 billion in economic impact every year for San Francisco. So that's very huge. It's something that we rely on constantly to be able to push our policy message to the mayor and our board of supervisors and try to get things done. Right now, we're facing some really serious challenges, though, as it in regard to live music, especially. So I'm going to list some of those things that we're faced with here in San Francisco. So right now, we're really dealing with the threat of displacement. Venue owners are being told that their leases are up and they have to get out in 4 to 6 months. And that space is then going to be used for residential or for tech, which is really a terrible story, honestly. We need more housing here in San Francisco. We're a densely populated city. So, you know, we're not against that, but we don't want our legacy venues going away. And so we're looking at creative ways to try to support keeping them here. If anyone's familiar with San Francisco, a couple of those venues that are examples that we're working on right now are Mezzanine and the Punchline. Mezzanine is a nightclub that's hosted huge live musicians as well as DJs, and the Punchline is an acclaimed comedy venue. Some of our other challenges are barriers to relocation, which goes hand in hand with displacement, permitting complexities for both brick and mortar venues and one-time events, and economic vulnerabilities that limit opportunities for local musicians, event producers, and venue owners. So even though we have these major economic successes and we have these stories that help drive change here in the city, we have some serious obstacles that we're trying to tackle right now. We're finding it, especially in regard to live music, we're finding that it's harder than ever to justify hosting live entertainment for local musicians here in San Francisco. Venue owners can't afford to support it. So just want to, sorry for the paper shuffling, but I had to kind of have some notes here. Some of the solutions that we're putting forward, and I had a huge meeting with the mayor, who luckily is incredibly supportive of nightlife and entertainment in San Francisco, is creating a live music fund. So this is essentially a program that would underwrite paid performance opportunities for San Francisco musicians by way of grants. So this could essentially help support live music programming. We're also pitching the launch of a music venue stabilization program. This is kind of piggybacking on Agent of Change, which is something that we started about, I want to say 4 years ago, where folks have to basically put in disclosure if they're going to be creating a housing development within 300 feet of a permitted place of entertainment. This piggybacks on that, as it gives venues money to spend toward stabilizing their venue, essentially soundproofing. So that's something that we have people lined up around the block wanting to take advantage of. And another thing that we're working on is actually just knowing the landscape of what we have here in San Francisco in terms of zoning opportunities. That's our biggest challenge, honestly. We haven't updated our planning code in so long that there's these huge limitations for opening up a new venue or actually relocating. And so we're working with the planning department and our controller's office to conduct a study to show us opportunities for how we can actually grow space here in San Francisco for entertainment opportunities. That one is super, super challenging and political. And I just kind of want to speak to that because that's going to be probably our most challenging project. We'll have to go district by district, most likely, to try to get that done. And I guess just wrapping it up, I just kind of want to say that, you know, it's harder than ever to be in the business of creativity. Every barrier is potentially the final barrier for a business owner or for a local musician here in San Francisco. And all of the things that we love about San Francisco were really based on creativity. It wasn't about restrictive process or zoning. It was about organic expression. And so we're trying to say, okay, when's our next summer of love? When's our next punchline? That, you know, when are we going to open these venues? And without efforts like the ones that we're trying to push right now, we're just going to continue celebrating our past. And we need to essentially look toward our cultural future and supporting business owners and the creative people who work so hard and several jobs to actually just exist in San Francisco. So that's it.
Great, thank you, Maggie. I've got to get used to using that mute button. Anyway, thanks for sharing that. And without further ado, we'll move a little north on our map up to Seattle. And Kate, can you share with us your observations?
I would love to. Hi, everyone. My name is Kate Becker. I am the creative economy strategist for King County, which includes Seattle. And prior to that, well, for years, I was an all ages promoter and producer and started a couple of long lasting all ages venues here. And then I worked for as the director of the Office of Film and Music, which also includes nightlife, for the last 5 years and only transitioned to this new role last month. So I'm primarily going to talk about what the City of Seattle and the Office of Film and Music are doing, because we're very much in a development phase with my new work. But the Office of Film and Music exists to equitably grow the creative economy centered in film, music, and nightlife. We have a long-standing City of Music strategy that was put in place in 2010. So we're at the end of a 10-year strategy to make us a city of music. And within that strategy, we have 3 tenets: that we will be a city of musicians, city of live music, and a city of music business. To help execute that plan, we have a 21-person music commission that I served on for years before I was in a staffing position with that commission. And that commission is made up of a combination of activists, nonprofit directors, and major heavy hitters in the music industry. And they help move all this important work forward for us. And so what are we seeing now in Seattle? Well, Seattle is a very rapidly gentrifying city. You may have heard things like fastest growing city in the nation for a few years, more cranes per capita than any other city in the country. These things, we are in a real boom time, and that our music industry and our music community are really feeling the effects of that. Some of the things that we are seeing are the same as what Maggie was just referencing. We are certainly seeing displacement of musicians, people moving either to other cities or out to the rural areas and the suburbs. We've done a recent study in partnership with Sound Music Cities, and Don Pitts, who's on the Zoom with us here, is part of that. And some of the things that we are seeing is #1 issue for our creatives and our musicians. Oh, this study was with music industry professionals. So their #1 issue is rentals, the cost of rent. The rent is too damn high, right? So residential space and then workspace is their second biggest concern, that they can't access these things. But some other things we're seeing, as part of a creative economy report, we're seeing that when you include the tech sector in Seattle, we have the highest paid creatives in the country. And when you take the tech sector out of a creative economy study and look at wages for what we call more traditional artists, including musicians, we have some of the lowest paid artists and musicians in the city. So trying to get by with low wages in the city is no easy thing to do now. So we are really working hard to focus on that and really figure out what can we do to fortify the people who are living on the margins. Where is the opportunity to fill those gaps and to provide some more structure to help them be able to get by in our city, because our artists and our musicians are indeed the heart and soul of our city. And, you know, Seattle's a great city, but part of the reason we're a great city is because of our very strong music and art scene. And we can't afford to lose that. We need those tech workers to keep coming here to fill all those jobs at Amazon and Microsoft and Starbucks. And a lot of what they use to entice those people to move to Seattle is our great arts, music, and nightlife scene. So we need to keep it healthy. It's at the core of the functionality of our city and the economic success of our city, as well as the cultural importance of our city. So I know we're a little tight on time here, so I think I'm going to leave it at that. But I'm happy to talk with any of you going forward, and Gigi has our contact info.
Thanks, Kate. Thanks, Kate, very much. We're not going to move necessarily any further northward right now, but Kate mentioned Don Pitts, who I have a history with too, and has a lot to say. So I'm going to turn it over to Don and let him share his observations.
Okay. Hi, Storm. Thanks. Hello, everybody. So I'll keep it brief, probably try to keep it briefer than what Kate did, but we are a US-based provider of sound and music ecosystems studies and music census work. Currently working in 4 cities the last 2 years: Pittsburgh, Charlotte, Seattle, and now DC. I spent 30 years in the music industry and a lot of time out in LA, and spent about a decade working in city government. And we're working with Music Policy Forum out of DC and New Orleans, working on developing this music census work that I commissioned in 2014 to offer this to other cities for a much more affordable price, trying to keep it under $25,000. I'll give you some trends of what we're seeing in other cities. Out of 11,000 respondents, what we're seeing is the biggest issues are lack of civic engagement from the music community. Regulatory enforcement is the #1 concern for venues and festivals and DIY venues. And then most cities we're finding in their lead with enforcement instead of regulating. And I'd like to give props to San Francisco. When I was in city government in Austin, we learned a lot from their regulating approach instead of enforcement. Some quick stats right quick on the community participation by music people. I think we're seeing a continued siloed and fragmentation. 20% said they do not participate in any form of communication. Overwhelmingly, 70% of them are only communicating online, and then 30% participate in some business networking. And I'd like to give props to Kate in Seattle, because they were the outlier in that, with 59% of their music industry folks are currently networking. Where do music people work? I think we're still the leader of the gig economy. 30% work full-time in the music industry, 40% have a full-time job outside of the music industry, and 30% are freelancing both in and out of the music industry. What we're also finding is that our workforce development approach is missing the mark for what these music industry professionals are asking for. 23% of the music professionals are not interested in any form of industry training. 22% would like to participate in industry seminars and workshops. 41% would like mid-level continuing education training, and 17% say they need some form of executive level leadership training. The terrifying data that we're getting from across these 4 cities is 50% of the music people are not participating in any industry infrastructure like BMI, Sound Exchange, CSAC. So that's pretty terrifying. 40% of the creatives are affiliated with BMI and ASCAP and CSAC, and roughly about 8% of the creatives are registered with Sound Exchange. And then income trends for the last 3 years across the board: 20% say their income has decreased, 35% say it has stayed the same, and then 40% say it has increased in the last 3 years. So with that, I'll leave it alone, and hopefully we can have some Q&A towards the end.
Great, thanks, Don. Some alarming figures in there. Coming from me, a music educator, I always feel like we failed if we hear those kind of numbers in our part of the equation. But thank you for sharing that. Nurit, you work with several cities as well. Could you share your observations with us?
Hello everybody. Hello from New Orleans. I feel a bit like an interloper as Los Angeles is my hometown, but here I get to say hello from this amazing electric city here. I am the executive director of the Music Forward Foundation. We were birthed around 26 years ago as the International House of Blues Foundation, with a focus on cultural understanding and common humanity courses, and we pivoted about 5 years ago into Music Forward, with now a focus on career development and career mapping for young people, focusing on 12 to 22-year-olds. We have a number of programs for both on-stage and off-stage tracks, and we open doors to an unmatched network of music industry insiders and mentors. And DeMarco White, our Los Angeles program manager, will be on a panel later this afternoon and can drill in a little bit more about that infrastructure that we are helping to build for the young people and this next generation of music industry leaders and innovators. We realized that we were not just a bridge for community into a venue when we were the International House of Blues Foundation, but now tucked into the Live Nation enterprise. We are the only nonprofit that sits underneath Live Nation. We now realize we could become a conduit and a bridge for community into the industry at large, as well as a bridge for the industry into a more diverse and inclusive workforce. We realized that 5 years in, we wanted to get a better pulse of what was happening out there. As we have all seen, not only is society quickly shifting around us, but the industry is changing very quickly as well. And so we have embarked on a multi-city roundtable and focus groups with the young people we serve and the industry that we service. 2 weeks ago, we were in Las Vegas speaking with both of these stakeholders, and we had our roundtable in New Orleans yesterday as well. The 4 cities that we're hitting: Las Vegas, New Orleans, Los Angeles, and we're concluding with Chicago in June as well. And we'll definitely keep you guys posted, and Gigi and everybody posted on some of the outcomes of this. So let me give you a quick snapshot of what I've learned and what we've gleaned from here in New Orleans, because it is critical to our work to understand where our young people are coming from and where we are leading them as well. So in New Orleans, and I won't take tell a lot of information on sound diplomacy, because Danny will talk a little bit more about what he does as well coming up. But sound diplomacy is not only opening an office here in in New Orleans, but is consulting with the Greater New Orleans Inc., which is the local economic development agency, and developing the New Orleans Music Economy Initiative. So this is a year-long process, asset mapping, and a full economic impact assessment on how music is affecting the economy. This is going to also help with a 5-year master plan on IP generation. I mean, this is going to be a tool for the local business, the local advocacy groups, to be able to walk into legislature and create more policy change, which has already started. You'll see in the last few years, tax incentives on the legislative level has been luring music companies and music creation to happen here. So there are following a lot of the entertainment legislative incentives that have been coming down the pipeline. The music industry is now following suit and is helping to, again, lure these really quality companies, music companies, trying to build an infrastructure. Currently, not a lot of booking agencies, no real publishing companies here. So they're really trying to build that infrastructure around what many talk about is this feeling that music and musicians, one of the greatest natural and renewable resources here in the city, is completely undervalued. And so what they're trying to do is build that structure around them. An example that was given to me, that the Essence Fest, which has been running for 25 years here, this year is providing a competition for one local artist to be presented. So that, again, there's a lot of conversation on, the artists not being appreciated, that artists are being flown in from other countries, they're being and other cities and being paid to perform here, while the local artists are assumed to play free of charge. And it's hard for me to even begin to discuss the fractured system that is the New Orleans school system. I think that's an entire conference all into itself. But through support from the Kennedy Center and programming there, there is the New Orleans Arts Education Alliance that was just built to, again, be an umbrella over what looks like 99% of the school system in New Orleans is now chartered and completely decentralized. So they're really trying to better wrap around support and services and understand how to support arts education scaffolded through the entire K-12 system in New Orleans. You know, the young people that we've spoken to in both New Orleans and Las Vegas are looking for more opportunities and places to perform. So Kate, it was great to hear about your all ages venues that you opened up in Seattle, because many are left out of most of the venues that are 21 plus and over. So they're looking for a number of places to perform. But what we've heard across the board, and this is from the artist perspective, is they still do not understand the business, right? We know that the rules are changing, that the information is constantly moving, and they're trying to understand how to navigate it. Lawyers are getting dozens of calls a week asking for what to do with their music, IP, licensing, and then the entire whole beast of social media and technology that is imprinting on how the artists now not only create music, but how music is disseminated and discovered. What we tell our young people, and any of the young artists in the room as well, is that we offer, through our programming, a snapshot of what is happening right now. And if you're university, you're getting a snapshot of what is happening right now. But you have to stay curious. You have to keep asking questions, and even looking at other industries and what is happening to stay on top of the curve if you want to be a competitive artist and be a part of the music industry these days. So thank you.
Thanks, Nurit, and safe travels back to LA when you make it. But it sounds like you're making huge strides there in New Orleans. So we've heard from two folks with associations that work with cities, and we're going to hear from another one. Sound Diplomacy is a little further off the banks of the United States. So over across the big pond, we've got with us Danny from Sound Diplomacy. Danny, what are your thoughts today?
Hello, everybody. Hi, Storm. Thank you very much. Pleasure to be spending some time with the wonderful panelists. Everyone's doing some great stuff. Basically, yeah, thanks for having me. I'm in London, and it's a bit later on in the day, so I'm kind of slowly shutting down. But so I guess I'll keep it quick. We at Sound Diplomacy, we work with cities, governments, and the private sector on basically evaluating the cultural and social infrastructure in place to deliver strategies that embed facilities for growth and sustainability around the music and the creative industries ecosystem, i.e. the platforms that harbour and promote creative talent in our cities. I come from managing artists. I have a deep interest in enabling creative talent and helping them navigate their way through the kind of the terrain of the music industry. Whilst constantly being kind of influenced by the external environment, we have to constantly be, aware of our role and our value on that. So kind of philosophically, Sound Diplomacy comes from a place of recognizing the value of talent and the need for an efficient pipeline for talent and the platforms in which enable talent to get to market, whilst also recognizing the influence of those facilities and infrastructure and policy in a place. So how we approach our work is, I guess, completely culturally sympathetic wherever we are. We We analyze the ecosystem. We count everything, we map everything. We start to create an understanding of the demographic profiles and cost of living, etc. And we start to build in strategies and strategic recommendations on how to embed music to help deliver within the industrial strategies, tourism strategies, social cohesion or social equity, I believe it is recognized as in North America. And we do this in over 20 countries around the world. As Narit mentioned, we're doing a lot with the city of New Orleans at the moment. It's a big project for us that we're incredibly privileged to be able to do and to get stuck in and to enable the city to recognize what are the mechanisms in place and what are the deficiencies that require attention. So, you know, we come in from a very ground up perspective, and our work's been adopted in a number of different ways across different cities around the world. We've seen certain cities pledge quite huge budgets towards embedding the recommendations and activating what we're asking them to do based on what we find. And, you know, a lot of the kind of the ecosystem, the stakeholders are starting to see some positive impact based on some of the policies and the kind of the growth of recognition that we're starting to create. So, you know, we're very, very pleased to be part of the discussion and to constantly be criticizing our own work. So we're, you know, enabling the discussion to grow and the recognition and value of music across well-being and social mobility, and also recognizing the music industry's role within that and how we can help the music industry navigate the future. I think we can all agree that it's been quite slow in reacting to a lot of things, but also incredibly good and nimble at reacting to some other technologies. So we're about protecting the ecosystem for artists and growing the value and recognition within the urban environment. We publish a lot of reports and books. This one is the Music Cities Manual, which if you go to sounddiplomacy.com, you can download it for free. This one's about managing your nighttime economy, your evening nighttime economy, which goes hand in hand with the spaces and places in which creators use. We basically showcase work from our friends all around the world, and we learn from everybody we work with, and we hope to continue to be a valuable part of this community and creating best practice and case studies to enable the value of music and the greater community to be recognized. So I will end on a quick little plug, which is hopefully something which will take your fancy. We're going to be delivering an event, our flagship Music Cities Convention event in Denver in 2020. I believe a number of the panelists are going to be incredibly involved in the event, so they will be there. So there's your, there's your value. The event is the globally kind of leading platform for the discussion around music within the urban environment, from policy and infrastructure through to global best practice. And you know, we're incredibly happy to be, you know, enabling the conversation through the events, and hopefully learn a number of things from them ourselves, so we can constantly keep the dialogue building. But anyway, thank you for your time, and right. Pleasure to be part of the conversation from the future, really.
Yeah. Thanks, Danny. And what a great segue to our next speaker from Denver, home of that convention next year. Matt, take it away and tell us what you're observing over here in Denver.
Well, I brought a guitar. I figured this is a musical day. We'll have a little bit of music in here. experience I have with music in Denver has been a little bit more recent. I used to produce a series of touring festivals around the country for New Belgium Brewing Company called the Tour de Fat. It was a bicycle festival, and I was really excited to hear the panel before this talking about segues between urban planning and design and the music and creative economy. I formed a company with my wife a couple years ago called Majestic Collaborations to do consulting work. We've consulted with Sound Diplomacy and the Canadian music agency Factor, and have a 3-year grant with the city of Denver to work on the Music Advancement Fund. So I wanted to talk about a little bit about what I've seen with music as advocacy around the country, and then I wanted to talk about the Denver Music Advancement Fund and the strategy that's there and how it's a little different. Certainly the stuff that Maggie and Kate were talking about in LA and San Francisco is really familiar for a lot of the cities that are growing fast. Denver is certainly one of them. And we'll talk later about what it feels like to have a city based so much around music, but also having cannabis and now legalized or decriminalized mushrooms coming to town. Well, anyways, we have got a lot to talk about. I'll try to go quick. So the festival that I produced with some folks around bicycle advocacy raised $5 million with a musical and comedy event that went around the country. We had one in LA and a couple of times, and then found ourselves as probably one of the foremost advocates for bicycling with this traveling festival. And the festival had solar, it was the largest solar powered festival, 3-stream waste recycling. We were able to use this employee owned brewery money to finance the bike advocacy part that was the heart and soul of that. And what I realized after I left was that the festival environment, the wastewater and power systems were really similar to a natural disaster site. And I really saw this clearly at Standing Rock, and was struck by how much we could help bring some organization that you might see for those mass gatherings of people to that sort of circumstance. So I reached out to the Mellon Foundation and presented this idea into the National Endowment for the Arts, and was given a grant to work in Denver with something called the Performing Arts Readiness Association or group. And the focus that I wanted to bring to that was, along with working with the bricks and mortar venues that are around our region, we wanted to use festivals as a place to study those systems. And looking forward, it's kind of what I wanted to do with what we've heard a lot of doom and gloom today about the kind of displacement of people in cities, and what can artists and musicians do to help this. And for me, it's been feeling very clear that if we are facing things like mass migration and need to have cities have a chance to practice what it's like to move a lot of people around, especially in a way that has been a bit more trauma informed and more thoughtful, the best place that I've been able to think of is to use these festivals as a model. So June 15th in Denver, you're welcome to come out. We'll be doing a symposium on mass gathering for event producers to study all of those parts of a festival, which would also perhaps be necessary in a large displacement from flooding or fire or other emergencies in your city. So that's kind of one big idea we're seeing. I'll go quickly through a couple of the parts that make the Denver Music Advancement Fund and our strategy here a little bit unique. We asked for a grant applications for the community to say how they wanted to create social change in Denver. And we saw 90 applications, and we think it's a great way for us to see the needs and skills that a community has to address a lot of the problems that were discussed before by Maggie and Kate. So if you want to look at the Denver Music Advancement Fund, it's easy to find. It's an interesting structure for it. We're looking forward to hosting Music Cities in 2020. We're glad to work with Storm and the University of Colorado Denver. The students that he has brought through that program have been spark plugs in this city's development into Music City with all of the uniqueness that's there. We, just to give you a couple of heat maps of what the advancement grants have shown, there's a ton of talent in our community, the desire to preserve and place keep for people of color, the Chicano community, First Nations, sensory diversity, like decoupling alcohol from events, looking at how to do more types of venues that are not proscenium or saloons, but those are all things that we're looking at, as many other places are. You could almost think of it as what Airbnb and Uber did to their industries. We're looking at venues being really vibrant that aren't necessarily permitted and haven't really thought through their safety considerations. We're having lots of experiential and immersive stuff. I know my friends Steiny and Noah over there at the Booby Trap Show have got a really interesting place to check out if you want to see where music meets comedy and stuff like that. We think that those are great places to study in this Mellon grant to look at venue safety. Yeah, I tend to look at those places where stuff gets a little bit weird and see how they're handling safety and community outreach, and then figuring that gives us a bit of a sneak preview to where things are going. Thanks for having me on the panel. We look forward to seeing any of you in Music Cities 2020 in Denver, or June 15th at the Art of Mass Gathering Symposium for event producers who want to do professional development.
Great stuff, Matt. Thank you. Thank you. It's too bad we didn't get to hear you sing, but you know, at some point, another reason to come to Denver. So we have run out of time, and unfortunately we will not have time for Q&A, but we hope that this information has been useful to you folks out there and attending in LA and online. And if you do have a particular question or just want to reach out to any of us for anything, please reach out to Gigi. She has our contact information and she can connect you or get an answer for you. And thank you very much for having us. See you later.